Hello and welcome to World Talks. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach. As EU foreign ministers meet in Luxembourg Monday, the Western Balkans are back in focus. The EU's chief diplomat, Kaja Kallas, is hosting a special dinner on the region just as tensions in Serbia escalate. Now, over the weekend, President Vučić staged a pro-government rally in Belgrade. Well, reports emerged that opposition leader Savo Manojlović was physically assaulted. Now, the civic movement he leads has played a key role in mobilizing protests and challenging the political status quo. And with pressure building at home and new scrutiny from Brussels, what's really driving the EU's renewed attention? And joining us now is Rasťo Kužel, Director MEMO 98, to discuss all this further. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Let's start first. Now, this whole rally, massive rallies organized and staged by President Vučić on Saturday, drawing supporters from Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia. What does this tell us? What does it reveal to us about his political strategy and use of state resources?
Well, it's clearly one way how politicians like Vučić react to such a crisis as we have seen in Serbia for many months now, following the disaster, the tragic collapse of train station Canopy, Novi Sad. And so instead of basically responding with the reform, President Vučić chose to respond with the repression, targeting students, media, and even academics. And I think his recent rally, is an example of, trying to sort of step up this pressure instead of focusing on reform and actually genuinely trying to investigate what happened in Novi Sad.
Mm-hmm. Now, interesting point that you made, that President Vučić has chosen repression. I'm kind of curious now to follow up with that statement where he has come out that the colored revolution is over. Now, does this imply that there's going to be more crackdowns? Is he discouraging more? What does that mean now in what you've just said?
I think it means basically that he is trying to find someone else to blame. And in particular, I think he's making this allusion that we have seen other similar politicians with these illiberal tendencies putting the blame on some outside forces, putting the blame on supposedly someone who is allegedly organizing this from outside. So I think it's a toolkit that we have seen in other places, including Hungary, including my own country, Slovakia.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about also the numbers here. If we're looking at what happened Saturday and the numbers, I mean, we've seen more and more of this whole thing escalate. And how do these protests compare to, let's say, some time ago, to other gatherings and rallies, March 15th?
Exactly. I mean, as you pointed out, on March 15, we remember that there were historic numbers. Over 300,000 people came to protest against President Vučić. What we saw over the weekend was roughly around 55,000 people. And again, I would just make this comparison to what happened, for example, here in my own country, where we remember, Prime Minister Robert Fico also busing people for similar type of demonstrations. So I think the main comparison is that people who want to express their sort of genuine disagreement with the way country is run don't need to be bussed. They usually come on their own. Whereas for this type of protests, I mean, I'm not excluding that some people genuinely still support President Vučić, but we also heard about people being bussed from different places.
Mm-hmm. I'm also curious because we want to know a little bit more here. There are reports suggesting that an activist, Serbian activist, Mr. Savo Manojlović, was assaulted. Now, do you see this as part of a broader crackdown here of political activists in Serbia?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not the first such incident. I mean, we have heard the previous similar incidents. We heard about this allegation that the sound weapon may have been used in the past. So apparently it looks that this is unfortunately part of the toolkit that President Vučić decided to use, and it's unfortunately not the first such incident that has happened over the period of these few months where we have seen these protests happening.
Mm-hmm. And there's all these different areas of protests, and all coming together. I'm curious also here about beyond corruption. What is the other motivators here in these protests across Serbia?
Well, I think it's clear, that particularly, I mean, looking at, who are the main forces behind these protests. These are young people, these are students, and I think they really see that they don't agree with the way Serbia has been run for the past so many years by this one person, who has been able to actually to gather so much support. I mean, so much power, rather. And so I think they take that this is a situation where Serbia is at the crossroad. And I think also the cycling trip to Strasbourg, by these students, I think is symbolizing that they want things to be different. They see Serbia as part of the European Union, and they don't want their country to be taken, more towards Russia, more towards China. So I think this is clearly a battle for the future orientation of the country.
Mm-hmm. I want to get more into this cycling protest because it's quite unique, I think, in terms of this whole stretch. It's very visible, moving on the roads. Tell us, is this more in your mind symbolic? Is this more meant at the international sort of front of reaction? Is this also touch ordinary Serbians? Tell us a bit more about this very unique protest.
I myself had a chance to be in Serbia during the historic times, when there were similar movements that toppled former President Milosevic. And this was in particular groups like Otpor, that were very creative in the way they staged their protests. I mean, there was a very similar rhetoric used. They were labeled as CIA agents, as preparing some military coup over the country, and in response, they made this sort of theatrical performance at the castle in Belgrade, where they simulated a sort of military exercise, obviously with their bare hands and no weapons. So I think this shows that Serbian people are creative. Serbian youth are very creative, and I take this trip as such. That it's a very symbolic gesture. That now we don't want to sort of side with where the president is taking the country, but instead, we really see our future within the EU, and therefore this trip to Strasbourg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how you said it's a very creative idea of protest, certainly very noticeable also across Europe and internationally. But if we're looking at this kind of pressure, this kind of effort, if we're looking at historically, has this ever amounted to success in Serbia or the Western Balkans in any way politically?
Yeah, it did. Exactly like during those times around the year 2000. I mean, when I sort of witnessed this election that was stolen by former President Milosevic. I mean, there was a sort of immediate reaction. There were protests, and I do believe that this is really a way how people who disagree with this sort of illiberal tendencies. I mean, this clear sort of authoritarian tactics that we have seen. Trying to discredit dissent, but we are talking about democracies. We are talking about a constitution providing for freedom of assembly, freedom to actually express your disagreements, and this is what I think we see more and more, politicians like Vucic, like Orban, like Fico, trying to sort of suppress in their own ways. So I think, it's a legitimate way to show the dissent. It's a legitimate way to sort of demand the basic rights, that I think the Constitution provides.
Mm-hmm. And also, let's jump back into the European theater for a minute, into Luxembourg. The Kaja Kallas, High Representative, is hosting before all the EU leaders, rather foreign leaders. It's also about the Western Balkans. Now, do you think that this pre-summit dinner and also having a discussion with the Western Balkans, is there more urgency now? How do you characterize this now on the agenda for the EU?
Well, I think what sort of preceded this dinner is clearly her trip to the region. I mean, to the Western Balkan countries. And here, it's important to mention that she visited a few Balkan countries, but not Serbia. And I think this was a clear message from her side. That those who undermine democracy will not be rewarded with silent diplomacy, which has been also criticized in the past. That there was a slow reaction towards this tragic incident in Novi Sad by the EU. That they sort of try to consider the leaders in Serbia still in the same way as before, like. Sort of supporting the Serbian ambition to sort of join the EU. So I think this seems to be a sort of clear indication that maybe this type of silent diplomacy is over now, and there was a clear signal again, like. Visiting, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Albania, and Montenegro, but skipping Serbia entirely. I think this sort of speaks volumes. And in my understanding, the EU is signaling it won't support governments that erode democracy, even if they are still considered stable partners.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I think we are seeing more of an increased renewed interest in the Western Balkans as a whole by the EU, a very important part for Europe. Of course, we'll discuss all that much more. Look, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate those insights. Rasťo Kužel, an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay tuned. Much more coming up right here on TVP World.